Well, I'm Rainey with the lovely law firm, of
Hi,
course. Many
Rainey.
of you have seen me. But I have Chris Smith on today, and I know Chris through Justin Lovely, of course. And you took pictures of our team down in Charleston. So we have a Goose Creek team that's based down there by you, and you live in Charleston, right?
I do. I live in West Ashley. Charleston, the most
Okay,
beautiful
okay.
city in the South. Of course, we all know that.
Hey, I'm partial to Myrtle Beach, but what can you say? Charleston is beautiful, though. I don't know that I would say Myrtle Beach is the most beautiful, but it's
and
still
and
fun.
before I photographed you, I did go to Myrtle Beach to photograph, the team up there first.
Oh, okay. So that must have been before my time then.
Yeah, yeah. And,
Okay,
and
okay.
actually, I've been up there twice. I did two photo shoots for Justin and Amy and the team up there in Myrtle Beach. And then actually just last week, I did a photo shoot of the new, is it a Somerville team? Mount Pleasant team?
Goose
With
Creek.
with
Yep.
Oh, it's the Goose Creek team? Okay.
Goose Creek team. Yep, yep. And that's kind of where I saw your work for the first time, with me is when you did that, which they look beautiful. I don't think we've released them yet, but they are awesome. You do a great job.
Thanks. Yeah, that was fun.
So, and actually kind of going on that before the main topics we kind of want to discuss today is kind of your love for motorcycles and the award you got for a motorcycle movie that you did. But before we go into that, go ahead and give us a little bit of a background of kind of, what you do. So obviously you do photography with your wife, right?
Yep. Absolutely. Yep. My wife Cami and I, we run Chris and Cami Photography. It's really embarrassing to say this, but I've been photographing professionally for over a quarter of a century.
Wow. Well, you
So
would never
that makes me
know.
old. It makes me very old. I lived through film. I lived through medium format. I lived through 35 millimeter format. I lived through
Wow.
digital when we switched to digital. And now I'm living through this new transition, this new crazy trend of mirrorless cameras. So, you
I've
know,
heard of this.
it's
Yes.
been an exciting ride. I love photography. There's always something new and interesting to learn.
Well, I was gonna say though, that's pretty cool though that you've been able to kind of adapt as you go because you kind of have to, right? You either adapt or you get left behind type of deal, right?
Absolutely.
But I feel like
And
sometimes people, they stick to what they know and then they kind of get
true,
left.
true. One
So,
thing my wife, she's always funny. She says that I get bored really easily doing the same thing over and over again. So I guess having all those transitions in the photography industry is probably helped keep my interest.
yeah.
Um, but in conjunction with that, we also photograph a wide diversity of subjects. And a lot of my photographer friends, and a lot of the marketing people say, well, you should specialize. If you want to shoot weddings, you should be a wedding photographer only. Or if you want to photograph commercial photography, product photography, you should only do that.
Mhm.
If you want to do architecture, you should, so a lot of people say you should specialize, but my brother's a financial planner and he says, no, no, you should diversify your portfolio. And going back to what my wife says, she's like, if you only did family pictures on the beach, you would get too bored. So that's why we shoot a wide variety of stuff from headshots to professional sporting events to architecture to drone photography, aerial photography to, family pictures on the beach to corporate, events. And it's
Mhm.
always exciting to me because every week is different. Every assignment is different. It's just such a fun industry to be in.
Yeah, yeah, and I could see that. I think it really depends on the person too, because sometimes people are good at just landscape photography type of deal. Like that's what they love to do. They don't want to, photograph people. And then
Mm-hmm.
other people, they kind of just want to do in studio type of stuff. They don't want to do the natural light. And then some people like the natural light instead. So sometimes I think people specialize because that is what they're good at and they're not necessarily good at the other types or they don't have a passion in it. But
Mm-hmm.
in your case, it's really great that you can diversify, and do all of them very well. So that's a bonus for sure that you should definitely capitalize on, right?
Sure, I guess. I enjoy it. I think, if you stop learning, you're gonna die young, So I find
Mhm.
it interesting to always be like, oh, there's this new technique that people are using in architecture photography. Let me go try some of that and, work that into my workflow. I think it's interesting.
Now your wife's a photographer too. Does she go out with you still, or does she pretty much now just do kind of like the admin stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rainey. she has her own photography degree. She got her degree from the Ohio Institute of Photography. Uh, but over time, when things changed from film to digital,
Mhm.
I think she sort of fell out of love of that organic film feel and
Yeah,
how
I get that.
photography was. The techie part wasn't really her thing,
Yeah.
because when
Oh, I totally understand that.
digital is
That's
a very techie thing. Yeah. So at that point, she just sort of said, "Why don't I sort of transition into managing the business?" And
Mhm.
her dad's a retired CPA, and so she's just great at the accounting and the invoicing and the client management and the
Oh,
editing.
that's
She's great at
perfect.
editing, and those are all things that I hate to do. So it works out.
Yeah.
Perfect marriage,
Wow.
perfect partnership.
I'm surprised that she, the digital turned her off, but she enjoys editing. I mean, that's the thing that I mean, that's super digital and everybody hates editing. So that's you scored big time with that.
Yep, absolutely, yeah.
But I
She did
relate.
for a long time, she managed a photo lab. So you remember the old days, you would take your film, drop it off at a photo lab, right? And somebody inside there would look through your pictures and they would make small adjustments to brighten your underexposed photos or take the green out of the pictures and things like that. So they would slightly fix your picture and print them out and then give you prints. Like you'd get a packet with prints. And
Mhm.
so she used to manage a lab that did that. So she has a really, really good eye for color and clarity and,
That's pretty
composition.
cool.
And so she just translated that into the software.
I'm so glad that we don't have those drop off places now, though. I always found that kind of weird, people looking through your pictures or family photos and stuff. I don't know. It's a little awkward sometimes, but, no, that's awesome though. I mean, yeah, when I was emailing back and forth with you guys, I was talking with Cami and, she was great, and I kind of stalked you guys on Facebook slightly,
Uh-oh.
and I saw that
Uh-oh.
her name is Camilla, which I had to bring up because my 10-year-old is Camilla,
Oh,
and I
no
just thought
way.
that was so cool.
How did you come up with that name?
You know, honestly, I don't know. I think that there was, like, a princess or somebody like that.
Mm.
It was more of my husband's thing, so but her name's Camilla, and I thought that that was really cool that,
What's his background with his heritage?
he doesn't have a cool heritage. He's from here, he's from Ohio, which I know it's where she's from too, so that's kinda funny.
Yeah,
But,
yeah. We moved down
yeah,
from Ohio. But I do think you're right. I think there was a Swedish actress or
yeah.
something like that. And the way Cammy's parents actually pronounce it is Camilla, like Pamela, but with a C.
Ooh, yeah,
That's the
I
way it
like
was
that.
pronounced originally by whoever that was.
Wow, no, that's really cool. I'm gonna have to start
Yeah.
calling my Camilla, Camilla.
Well,
Sounds
it,
cool.
I wouldn't, and I'll tell you
No?
why. Because when
Uh-oh.
she's talking on the phone to, you know, the airline, and she goes, "Yeah, I'd like to book a ticket. My name is Camilla." They hear Pamela.
Camelot. Oh,
No, they
Pamela.
hear Pamela. So she
Pamela.
often gets misspellings because of that. So if you say
That's funny.
Camilla, people know what that name is.
Well, when you have a name like Rainey, you always get misspellings anyway, so I understand. Um,
Absolutely.
that's really funny though. When you and I were chatting prior to getting on here, we also well, you brought up kind of where you're from, where you were born and raised, and I think that that is so cool to bring up even for just a second. So, can you tell folks, you said your parents were missionaries in Africa, right? And that's where you
Mhm.
were born and raised?
Correct. Yeah. So
That's
so
crazy, that's awesome.
you can't tell by the color of my complexion that that's where I was born and raised. Yeah.
Well, and you don't have, like, an accent or anything.
True, and I've traveled a lot. I've been all over the world. So I really feel like I don't have any kind of an accent, and that's just because of the nature of being what they call a third culture kid. I don't know if you ever
Mhm,
heard that
mhm.
term before, TCK.
No, but it
But
makes sense.
yeah, so you grow up in a foreign country with parents who are of a different nationality. So you, as a child, often third culture kids don't feel like they have a true identity or a home because they're like, well, I live here. This is where I was born. This should be my home. But my parents, their heritage is American, so that should be home. So you kind of feel like you're kind of lost in this third culture. But I loved growing up overseas. I felt like I was Huckleberry Finn, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
we ran around barefoot everywhere and shirtless, and I mean,
Yeah.
uh, just not a care in the world.
Well, how old were you when you moved from Africa? How long were you there consecutively?
So the way my parents work was, they would work in the field for 4 years, and then they would come to the United States for 1 year of what they call furlough or home leave. And during that time, they would go around and speak to the different churches that sponsor them, help
Wow.
raise support and that sort of thing, and talk about the programs that those churches are helping to fund, right? And then we would go back for 4 years. So my 1 year when I was an infant, my third grade year, and my eighth grade year were all spent in the United States. The rest was in Africa. I graduated high school there at a boarding school, an American school uh, called TASOC, the American School of Kinshasa. Um, and then I came back here to attend college. And unfortunately, after I left, I did go back in '92 to visit. And shortly thereafter, around '93, um, there was a lot of rioting going on, and the country fell into some pretty bad civil unrest. So I personally haven't been back since then. I would love to
Wow.
go back. So many of my friends I would love to see. Um, but those who did graduate from TASOC with me, who have returned, has said, it's not the country you remember. It's the people
No.
aren't there. A lot has changed. So that's kind of sad. But my heart still belongs to Africa, and I would still love to go back. And
Oh, yeah, I mean, the majority of your childhood memories are there, so,
true.
that wow, that's I have so many questions, but I feel like it could take forever, so
Yeah.
I'll only ask a couple, though. Whenever you were
Well,
going back and forth
before
Sorry,
we
go ahead.
change, I'll mention that that's where my wanderlust began. Is growing up and seeing different cultures. I love to travel, and I know you've done some traveling. So let me throw it back at you.
Well, I haven't done traveling like that. Very little traveling. When you were going back and forth to the schools, was that difficult for you?
It was in a way, and it's kind of funny that here we are talking about my past, and it took me a long time to really be open and honest about it, because my third grade year, my eighth grade year, you can imagine I was persecuted. I mean, kids would pick on me a lot. They'd call me spear chucker and lion chaser, and so here you are, some foreign kid coming into a school, and then they find out you were born in Africa. I mean, you can imagine all the
Mhm,
all the bullying that went on. But the good part was I was leap years ahead of everybody else in my soccer skills, so I
mhm.
made up for it by scoring goals and being,
Yeah.
the hot kid on the soccer team. But yeah, so often I would just hide that fact. I wouldn't tell people that I was born or raised in Africa because I was embarrassed or worried that I'd be judged. But
Mhm.
I've dealt with all that and come to realize that I love that part about my background, and I loved growing up overseas, and
Very
I don't
cool.
I don't care what other people think. I'm gonna share that experience. So
That's awesome. Now how about your parents? Are they still around?
they're still around, but they're retired. They retired in California,
Okay.
and
And
kind of ironic, as a motorcycle enthusiast. I live in South Carolina, and I envy all of my motorcycle riding buddies in California, because in California, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but lane splitting is legal over there.
Okay. So I don't know much about so I recently got my motorcycle license, which I'm pretty excited about, but
Congratulations.
I'm like brand new. So I don't know a lot of these things. So
What do
if
you ride?
somebody's watching and they don't know what that is, like me, hopefully, um, can you explain what that is, the lane splitting?
Oh, yeah, yeah. So lane splitting, and we could go off on a huge tangent right now, but lane splitting and lane filtering are two very separate and distinct things. There's also one called lane sharing, but we won't really go into that. But growing up overseas, it was totally normal. The way you rode was motorcycles filled up all that empty real estate between cars. That was the motorcycle's purpose. That's the way you got around. You just filtered through the traffic to the front of the
Mhm.
line at stoplights, and it alleviated all the congestion. It kept your motorcycle from overheating because, as you know, or may not know yet, but you'll learn that motorcycles, part of their cooling system is to be moving. So the
Mhm.
wind going over your motor helps to cool the motor and keep it from overheating. Motorcycles have a small, most of them have a small cooling system. We don't have a huge radiator like a car has. So that airflow is very important. If you're sitting in rush hour traffic in 100-day heat, not only are you overheating as a person because you don't have air conditioning, but your
Mhm.
motorcycle is also suffering and overheating. So keeping the motorcycle moving is important. Um, but so the biggest advantage to lane filtering and lane splitting is that it alleviates the traffic. Because if you have a large interstate, for example, with maybe 2 rows or 3 rows of, let's say, Highway 526 here in Charleston, 2 lanes of traffic going the same direction. You come to a stop, you come to a stoplight or whatever, um, and there's 10 motorcycles lined up taking the space of a car somewhere in that lane. If each of those motorcycles could pull out of that lane and go through the cars, through the 2 lanes of traffic, and
Yeah, through the
filter
center.
filter all the way to the front to the stoplight or the stop sign or whatever, or the accident or whatever's going on, then all of the cars that are behind those motorcycles get to move up one whole spot. So you can imagine how all those people at the end of the line would save, hundreds of minutes of driving time throughout the years. Uh, so lane filtering not only allows the motorcyclists to keep their engines cooler, keep their bodies cooler, it's also alleviating all the traffic for the cars. So it's a huge benefit for everybody, not just the
Mhm.
motorcyclists. But
Hmm. And
and
what's the difference between lane splitting and lane filtering?
lane splitting, great question. Lane splitting is when traffic is moving. So filtering is you just filter to the front to the stoplight. And as we all know, motorcyclists usually take off; they accelerate faster than cars usually.
Mhm.
So you filter to the front, you kind of just pull in front of the front car, and then when the light turns green, you take off, and you're not holding anybody back because your acceleration is faster than anybody would have been anyway. So
Hmm.
that's filtering. Lane splitting is when you're on a huge congested highway and the vehicles speeds are lower. Like in California, they have huge highways with 5 lanes of traffic going the same direction.
Mhm.
But because the congestion is so bad, they can't all travel at the speed limit. They can't travel 65 or whatever the speed limit is. There's just so many cars, and so everybody's driving at 35 miles an hour instead of 65. Well, if you're on a motorcycle and there's a clear lane, you can get into that middle lane as long as you're doing it safely and you know uh, good using good judgment. There are rules to this. That it's a very controlled thing, but you can safely go a little bit faster than the other cars. And again, you're alleviating all the traffic. All the cars behind you can move up one spot in their in their
Yeah.
in their lane. So
Well, you said there was 4 states where it's legal to do lane splitting, right?
there's only one where it's legal to split.
Okay.
4 states, four and a half, it's legal to lane filter. Yeah. So California, it never had a law against lane filtering, um, but uh, in 2016 they legalized lane splitting. So in California, people had been doing it for a long time, um, but finally they officially legalized it in 2016. So you can lane split and you can lane filter.
Wow.
Um, and we've been talking about one benefit, uh, that benefit being the alleviation of traffic. But really, there's a much more important benefit to lane filtering and lane splitting, and that is safety. It is actually proven that filtering through traffic for as a motorcyclist is much safer than riding in line with other cars.
Really?
Much, much.
That would have been my concern is like, yeah, okay, it saves, it saves space and time and stuff, but what happens when you're, in the way of people trying to change over lanes and stuff? That would be my concern.
That's a good point, and that's why, as I mentioned earlier, it must be done safely and with good judgment. And I'll tell you some tricks when you're doing filtering, to avoid that sort of thing. But if you remember, filtering is when all the cars are stopped.
They're
There's
stopped,
two
yeah.
lanes of traffic, and you're just filtering to the front of the line.
Mhm.
There's no
So there's no
chance.
lane changing there, yep.
So that's why lane filtering is legal in three and a half other states. Um, Montana, Utah, Arizona, all have lane filtering as part of their driving regulations more recently than California. Um, but in Hawaii, their streets are so narrow. Uh,
Mhm.
it's a small island, but because of the increased congestion, they now allow what they call shoulder surfing.
Wow.
So you can't filter through cars through traffic because the streets are so narrow.
Mhm.
But
But you can go on the outside.
if you come up to a stoplight, or there's somebody turning left or whatever, and they're holding everybody up because of traffic, you can go onto the shoulder and go around all that. So
Huh.
that's one way that they're allowing lane filtering. So, but they only allow it on the shoulders.
And the filtering is what you're saying is safer, not the lane
Yes,
splitting.
correct.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That makes sense.
And yeah, so the filtering is legal, and there are stipulations. I'm not just saying, you're allowed as a motorcyclist to go whipping down cars as fast as you want. There are very specific regulations. For example, Utah, let's take for example, I believe the speed of traffic must be 50 miles per hour or less.
Mm.
And you, as a motorcyclist, cannot be passing other people uh, at more than 10 miles an hour faster than their speed. So there are very
Okay.
specific
Yeah,
guidelines.
there's rules. That makes
Yeah.
sense. That makes
Uh,
sense.
and those apply technically in California as well. But because they've been doing it for so long, there's always going to be a few hothead motorcyclists that
Of
give
course.
everybody else a bad name, and they're like flying down, and
Yeah.
that's
Well, I think
unfortunate.
we all see that, right? Because we see, I mean, it's not legal here, and we still see it happen from time to time during bike weeks and stuff. So, you know, those are the rebels.
That's true. That's true. And you can't judge all motorcyclists by that.
Right, right. Well, let's talk about kind of how your love for motorcycles kind of started. When did you start riding?
Oh man. Uh, I'll have to send you a picture. My parents bought overseas motorcyclists are very common. Think of scenes that you've seen from Asia of, thousands of,
Mhm.
like the Philippines,
You have to, there's
motorcyclists,
not enough room, right?
mopeds, motorcycles are everywhere. Yeah. Here in America, we're the one country where we drive these huge SUVs and there's one person in that whole car. But overseas, you get one person. You'll find five people on a motorcycle down in Latin America. So,
Wow.
got the little kid on the gas tank, and mom sitting in front of dad, and the two kids hanging on behind that.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
it's much more efficient that
So you
way.
pretty much started riding them young.
Yeah, yeah. No, I didn't have my first one. My parents are missionaries, so they don't have a huge amount of disposable income. But they did buy our family a motorcycle when I was 15, and we used that as a great, means of transportation, and you know, just for fun.
Yeah,
Um,
I did see the one picture you sent of you on a bike. It seems
yeah.
like you were about 15,
Yep.
maybe a
Yep.
little older, so that's awesome.
Yeah. And it was awesome, riding over there. Like I said, it it blew my mind when I came to the United States and got my first motorcycle here in the United States, and somebody said, "Oh, you can't do that." And I'm like, "What? It doesn't make sense." Everywhere in the world, you can lane filter or lane split,
Mhm.
except North America, basically. I
Yeah.
mean, there are some countries like in Scandinavian countries in Europe where they don't, but almost everywhere, every continent has multiple countries. Where
Hmm.
all of South America, all of Central America, just south of us in Mexico, it's encouraged. Because they realize how much it alleviates the traffic. Um,
Yeah. No,
but
it is interesting. It kind of makes you really think about it because obviously you come from a place where that's normal, and then here in
mhm,
America, when you first hear of, like, lane splitting or filtering, you're like, "What? No, it's wrong. It's
Mhm.
against the rules. No." But then when you think about it, it does make sense,
Yeah.
as
It
long as it's regulated, like you said.
it's just a, that's not how we've done it in the past
Mhm.
mentality.
Right,
And,
right.
that California has changed it, and following California, like I said, there's 4, 5 if you consider Hawaii, other states now, or 4 others besides California. There's actually 10 other states where there's legislation, where it's being considered.
Okay.
So
I
so
almost
so
wonder
others
too
are
if
following.
yeah. Well, I almost wonder too if it's because we have so many less riders than as you were saying, people just grow up with riding bikes, in other countries, and here we
Mhm.
have so many more cars. I wonder if that plays any kind of, factor into it.
It might. And I'm a bit of a closet environmentalist, so I wish more people would ride motorcycles because they're so much more efficient. My bike gets
Yeah.
60 miles to the gallon.
Mhm.
Um, and even if you're driving an electric vehicle, you know, if you're stopped in traffic, do you know how many miles per gallon you get if you're dead stopped in traffic? Zero. It doesn't matter if you're an electric vehicle or an SUV or a motorcycle. When you are stopped in traffic, you are idling and you are getting 0 miles per gallon.
Mhm.
And all of your fumes are belching out into the environment. And, you know, so
Yeah.
we won't go into all the environmental concerns right now, but lane filtering has that benefit too. It
Has those
allows
benefits, yeah.
it
Mhm.
allows traffic to keep moving, and the more you're moving, the increase your miles per hour is, and the less you're, destroying the environment. But
Yeah. Well, that's very
um,
interesting. Yeah, I'd be curious kind of as other legislation looks at this kind of, you know,
mhm.
if it gets pushed forward or not and what kinda happens with that, but it is interesting for sure. Now,
The
Justin
same
Lovely tells me that you, are an enduro bike fan. Did I pronounce that right?
enduro is definitely a market, but I think what he means is an adventure bike rider.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, he said
Enduro,
enduro, and I'm new at this, so I'm like,
yeah,
"What's
yeah, yeah.
enduro?"
Yeah, and he may have thought it was enduro, but really what we do is a market called adventure bike riding.
Okay, now explain this to me. What's that?
Enduro is like you are racing in Baja California off road. Enduro bikes are both street and off road legal. So
Okay.
they have knobby tires, bigger suspension, um, things like that. So they can go off road,
Mhm.
but they're perfectly legal, and they're the types of bikes that are perfectly happy sitting on a highway too. So it's the kind of bike that you could literally take around the world. And
And you have that or no?
yeah, my bike is an adventure bike. Yeah,
Okay, okay. And an adventure bike, is that similar?
that that's the kind of biking that I do. So what do you mean?
Oh, so you're saying your adventure bike is an enduro bike?
No,
No, it's
enduro bike,
different.
an enduro, and technically enduro means off road, but off road
I see what
racing
you're
type
saying.
stuff.
So
Yeah,
then what do you ride right now?
an adventure bike.
So that's the brand, that's what it's called?
It's a segment. So
Okay,
let's break it down this way.
okay.
Uh, if you're a Harley Davidson rider, you're a street rider, right? If you're an enduro rider or a dual sport rider, you primarily are on a dirt bike type bike. Think of
Okay.
a dirt bike, with big knobby tires and a little tiny gas tank and really lightweight. You can whip in and out trees.
Mhm.
So that's that. An adventure bike is kind of in between the two. Uh,
Okay.
you're a more upright riding position, kind of like an enduro bike, um,
Mhm.
as opposed to a Harley where you're leaning way back.
Uh-huh.
Um, and the suspension travel is a little bit bigger, so you can take the bumps if you go off road, um, and you have knobbier tires. Um, so it's the kind of bike that you could go anywhere on.
Right.
It's kind of like a Jeep, if you
Yeah.
will.
You can
Um,
go off-roading with it, but you can take it on the highway, all that good
exactly,
stuff.
exactly. So they're
Now
they're
why
the,
do
they're the
you
perfect they're the perfect bike for traveling, for doing big trips.
Okay, well, that's I guess that was gonna be kind of my question is why do you prefer that over the other bikes like a Harley?
Yeah, I think it's just because of my love for travel,
Mhm.
and my love for getting off the highway. I'm not a big fan of just sitting on a highway. I like small towns and meeting the local people and eating the local cuisine.
Well, I feel like this all stems from you growing up in Africa too, I mean, right?
Absolutely.
Those aren't always all, like, paved pretty roads down there, it's
True.
off-roading a lot, so
That's
that
right.
that makes sense.
The most interesting things are found at the end of a dirt road, I think.
I
So,
love that.
yeah.
Spoken like a true artist.
But in 2019, it's kind of funny. I was planning a trip down through Mexico. I take my motorcycle, went down through Mexico and traveled around. And when I was planning this trip, a buddy of mine I was talking to, who's also a professional photographer, but also a professional videographer, and he said, "Hey, why don't we do a video series for YouTube about your trip?" I said, "Well, okay, what are you talking about?" So he goes, "You just record it with your GoPros, record your trip, do a little moto vlogging, tell people where you're going, what you're seeing, that sort of thing. Upload the footage each night, and I'll edit it as like a like a daily diary of your trip." And I said, "Okay, all right." So we did that, and it turned out to be a huge hit. And so we started a little group called Moto Photo Adventures, and so you can find us on.
Is that your motorcycle group that you ride
That's
with?
our yeah. So we're kind of blending that passion of adventure biking with travel,
I
uh,
love it.
and we're sharing it with other people. So we did that Moto Photo Adventures. That was our first real big, series, if you will.
Okay. Now
And
was that the one that won an award?
nope, nope, that was an
Okay.
early on one. That was pre-COVID. And then during COVID, our photography business has got a little bit slow. So we said, you know what? Let's do this trip called the Trans-America Trail.
Hmm.
And the Trans-America Trail is basically a patchwork of dirt roads, farm roads, country roads, off the grid type roads, trails
Wow.
that goes from the Atlantic coast to the Pacific coast. So we did
Very
that.
cool.
It took us 31 days or 30 days, 30 days. And a good buddy of ours, Steve, joined us. And Steve is also a professional photographer. So now we've become the three amigos, and we do all kinds of trips. And it's become this. The three of us are the Moto Photo Adventures team, and our focus is basically, since we're all photographers, moto, photo, and adventures because we like motorcycling, photography, and travel.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, so it's kind of
That's so
fun.
neat. Well, I always wonder with trips like that, did you run into any kind of, like, dicey situations?
Never,
No? Wow.
never. Before I went to
I mean, when you're
Mexico,
going off the grid, you just not you're in territory you've never been through, you may be riding at night or something, I don't know, but,
right?
it always makes me worry.
I guess I assumed that your question referred to dicey situations in terms of meeting people that.
Oh, no. I mean, I guess anything really. I mean,
Oh,
people
okay,
or
okay.
just the terrain, just,
Oh, yeah.
anything, weather.
That sort of thing, absolutely. So we were camping in Colorado one time, and a bear came through camp. So that was a thing. You know, Steve often sleeps in a hammock. He
Oh,
camps
wow.
in a hammock, and Jason and I are on the dirt in a tent. So having a bear shuffling around outside your tent is a little intimidating.
Oh, yeah. Well, especially if you're in a hammock out there, that's for sure.
Steve's the one that noticed it the most. He was like, "Oh, don't come near me."
Well, what did
um,
you guys do? You just kinda hung tight and it went away?
yep.
Thank God.
It was a campsite, so we were surrounded by RVs and
Oh, well, that's good at
other
least,
campers. So
but
had
still.
anything happened, uh, there were plenty of people around. I don't. Uh, Terrain. Oh my gosh, uh, going across 11,000-foot peaks in the middle of the mountains in Colorado, and the amazing terrain in Utah. I mean, you're riding along at 11,000 feet, and it's just a sheer cliff. Uh,
Oh, that would freak me out right there.
we carry a drone with us, to film our adventures with, and I would take the drone up, off the road, and then I would fly that direction to get a shot of us, and like the altitude would go from, okay, it's 6 feet off the ground, and I would go 20 feet that way, and it'd be like, you know, 2,000-foot drop. Uh, but yeah,
Oh my gosh.
there were some dicey roads. We dropped our dogs
Yeah.
a good bit of time, and we had a few
You have to
flats.
be a little bit of a of an adrenaline junkie to do that, right?
Well, we're not 18 anymore, so
But
we do it
still, oh,
safely and cautiously, but,
you're smart about it.
the scenery was epic and totally worth it, just to
Yeah.
see those amazing views
Wow.
with those mountains. Cinnamon Pass was just unbelievable, but, the most recent trip was called the Mid-Atlantic Backcountry Discovery Route, and it basically goes from Damascus, Virginia, up to Lawrenceville, Pennsylvania, right on the border with the New York state line, and it follows the ridges of the Appalachian Mountains. So you're riding through these beautiful forests and these amazing valleys below you. It's not as treacherous as the Rockies, but the Appalachian Mountains are just gorgeous and just amazing scenery. And you're riding through state forests on gravel roads, and you're meeting these people out in the middle of nowhere that uh, I just think it's so fascinating to
Yeah.
come around a corner on a motorcycle, and there's some guy standing there chewing on a tobacco stick or whatever, and you just stop and chat and say how you doing, and it's just neat to meet the locals. I think
Yeah.
we had people allow us to camp behind their store. They had a little mom and pop country store, and it was getting dark, and they're like, so we're in there buying some food, and we're like, are there campsites nearby? Are there any places we can? Oh, maybe 20 miles that way, but y'all are welcome to camp in the backyard. And by the way, here's the keys to the store if you want to go in and get yourself any coffee in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
Literally
Wow.
handed us the keys to the store. Um,
Wow.
so I personally say that you meet the kindest,
Yeah.
nicest people when you're traveling. Um, that's
That's
part of what I
awesome.
love about traveling.
Yeah. It kinda restores your faith in humanity a little bit, right?
It does. I had a lot of people when I went to Mexico that were like, "Ooh, you're gonna get shot, you're gonna get killed, you're gonna get," and I kid you not, I had the best time in the world. And I was, staying off the highways. I was going through villages, and some of these people, the camera gear that I carry probably is worth as much as their yearly salary.
Oh, yeah.
And I have people coming up offering me the shirt off their backs. I mean, literally, like,
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah.
can I buy
That's
you lunch
awesome.
today? Here, come. Would you give me the honor of staying at our home tonight? Just stuff
Yeah.
like that, where I'm just like, people, I,
Yeah.
you know.
That's awesome.
But
Well,
the
tell me
film,
about the award that you got. What was it for one of these films?
yeah. So the film festival that we just won is called the Backcountry Discovery Route Film Keep It 100 Film Festival. And so, yeah, our video is on YouTube now. The festival is done. They announced us as the People's Choice Award winner, and
That's awesome.
they sent us a whole bunch of swag. So we won a lot of prizes, which was really really nice. But really, it was just just knowing that many people loved our video,
Yeah.
and the story that we told in it. And the inspiration that we gave in terms of just get outside, get outdoors, go see the world, go travel, meet some new people, and that it touched that many people that we won. That's what really was the reward for us. Um, but it was filmed during our backcountry discovery route trip, and we are still publishing our videos. We've got episode 3 from that series. It has been published, and we're working on editing 4, 5, 6. There's probably going to be about 10, I would imagine.
That's
Because,
so cool.
but
What are people is it, everybody that loves these, or is it kind of, bikers that are really enjoying this?
the YouTube channel, the
Yeah, like
videos,
the movies and the videos, everything that you guys have been filming.
yeah, I think that majority of them are adventure riders. There are definitely a lot of people who watch them. They are just travelers.
Mhm.
So for us, we happen to use motorcycles as our means to travel, but it's the same. We're non-denominational as far as if you're on a Harley
Mhm.
doing Highway 66, that's great. You're traveling, you're meeting the locals, you're going out, you're eating the local food, you're supporting the local economy. We love that. If you're
Yeah.
on an adventure bike and you're doing an off-road trip like we do, great. If you're backpacking and not even using a motorcycle, great. I just want our channel to encourage people to get out and travel, see the world, and experience the life to its fullest. So,
Yeah. Well, and there's some people who may never get the chance to kind of see the world that way, and so it's cool that you're also showing that and
mhm.
showing how people can be, through your experience. I wonder if there are people who, will kind of take that route that you guys did now that they saw you guys go through it.
I hope, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the routes are known adventure rights, like the Backcountry Discovery Group is a phenomenal group. They're very philanthropic. They're very big on getting motorcyclists to go out and see parts of the country that are not on the highways. They're off the beaten path, and to spend their dollars in those little local communities. They want to help the local communities. So I think that's a great thing. And they have discovery routes all over the country. I think we have 10 now, if I remember correctly. Most of them are out west, but a lot of them, like the Mid-Atlantic Backcountry Discovery Route, is over on the East Coast. They also have a Northeast Backcountry Discovery Route that's
Mm.
even further north than where we went. So there are a lot of these are established trails, and you can buy the GPS tracks for them, and those are the breadcrumbs that you follow to make sure you don't get lost. Um, we invent our own too. Like last year, we did the sunburn circuit, we called it, where we basically just went down and circumnavigated Florida, down to Key West and back. The iconic little spots like Key
Yeah,
West and the,
of
the
course.
Everglades and places like that.
Do you have any Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So we'll invent our own trails, but sometimes we're following a trail that's already established.
No, I love it, it's so cool. Do you guys have any, favorite riding spots locally in South Carolina?
Uh, sort of. Yeah, absolutely. Uh, South Carolina, Charleston, over here on the coast, unfortunately, everything is flat.
Mhm.
So there's very few curvy roads, there's very few hills, and those are the things most motorcyclists love, right? That's the advantage of being on a motorcycle as opposed to a car, is you get that sensation of leaning into a corner,
Mhm.
that freedom of being on two different axes instead of just one.
Yeah.
Um, I kind of liken it to being in a small aircraft. You just get that same freedom of I can go, anyway. Um, but yeah, so unfortunately, there's not a lot of great riding right here directly in South Carolina. But
Mhm.
there are a lot of favorite roads I ride on all the time. Like Tougadoo Road is a phenomenal road with a few curves. It goes over the marsh and stuff like that. But we also have some fantastic dirt roads, like through the Francis Marion Forest, areas like that are fantastic.
Yeah.
And there's a really neat route that's uh, recently come to fruition. A guy named Chris Cox invented the South Carolina Adventure Route. It's called the SCAR, South Carolina Adventure Route. And it's basically kind of like I was describing the Trans-American Trail, where it's a patchwork of roads. He was able to go through and find, okay, where's the dirt roads that connect from this town to this town, and through this state
Wow.
forest and through that park and through this. And so it basically circumnavigates all of South Carolina, avoiding the interstates,
Wow.
staying in the smaller communities, staying off road. Um, and so we've done that. We have an entire playlist on the South Carolina Adventure Route.
Wow. Man,
You did,
you learn something new every day. That's so
absolutely.
cool. I would love
Is
to
your
share some of these things on our, Myrtle Beach Biker Lawyer Facebook page. All of
Yeah.
this stuff is on YouTube?
Yes, yeah. It's
Okay.
all at motophotoadventures.com.
Okay, okay.
Um, and yeah, I'll be happy to email you the link to like the South Carolina Adventure Routes Facebook page and stuff like that.
Yes, I would love that, and then, some of the routes that you're talking about that you guys got the award for and, some of the earlier ones too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very
Are
cool.
are you? Is your bike what kind of bike do you have?
I don't have a bike, Chris.
Oh, you just have a
I,
license.
so me and my husband I went in September and he just went in November, but we took like the Harley riders course.
Nice.
And so we did that and then we got our license, but then it just got really cold. And then,
Yep.
we're both really short. So we've been trying to shop around for something that's kind of,
Hmm.
I don't know, easier to handle for that. As you were talking about bikes overheating and stuff,
Hmm.
it's funny because the bike that I was learning on, it just didn't like the motor was up high and my thighs just kind of kept, like, almost touching
Oh,
it, and
yeah.
it was just so hot, and so I was, like, reliving that as you were talking.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm trying to find, um,
The right
something
bike.
that's gonna be yeah, a good first one. I don't want something super, fancy for the first one because I know I'm gonna lay it down a
Hmm.
few
Hmm.
times.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm just looking for something small, short, and,
Do you
a
want any
good first bike.
recommendations?
Of course.
All right. So the bike that I ride, I'm short too. So my
Okay.
adventure bike is a small adventure bike. It's called the Honda CB500X.
Okay, I think I've heard of that one.
Honda makes a street bike called the Rebel 500.
The
It,
Rebel is what I was looking at.
it uses the exact same engine that my bike does. It's
That's
a
so funny that you
phenomenal
said
engine.
Rebel.
If you bought that Rebel, it would last you forever, and very low maintenance, excellent gas mileage.
Well, and I like the way it looks too. It's cool
Got a cool
looking.
look.
Yeah,
Absolutely. A friend of mine actually had one. I think he sold it, but loved it. Just a really, really fun bike. The seat is really, really low, so it makes you feel secure because you can put both feet flat on the
yeah.
ground, and it's not too powerful that you're gonna, like.
I put out a poll at some point and was just kind of asking, I'm in some of these motorcycle Facebook groups and I just put, okay, like what do you guys think is like the best beginner bike? And so many people said Honda Rebel, Honda Shadow.
Hmm.
So yeah, I do like the Rebel. It's definitely one that I've been keeping an eye on.
There you go.
So, I love that you also said that, so that makes me happy because yeah, I do, and, I'm a girl, I care about the way it looks too, so I do like the way that the Rebels look, so, it's just kinda finding the right deal that comes along.
Sure. You bring up a really good point. It's very important, I think, when you're buying your motorcycle. You don't want to buy it purely based on the numbers, purely based on your research.
Mhm,
You want to buy something that you just love, something you are
mhm.
passionate. And I think the CB500X is just a beautiful bike. It's just a well designed, great all around motorcycle. Um, so
I'm gonna
yeah.
have to look that one up, I don't think I've seen that one.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, what kind of colors do you like on a motorcycle?
I like black.
Okay, me too. Me too.
Yeah, it's just like the traditional, biker look, you gotta do the black.
Got to do the black. Yeah. Well, if you ever see a picture of mine, mine's named Trinity, based on the heroine in the movies The
The
Matrix,
Matrix, yes, love it,
and she's always dressed in all black leather. So, but yeah, so
love
mine's
it.
an all black CB500X. It has so many gadgets and accessories on it you would not believe. But she's mine, and I love her, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I
So
love that, that's so cool.
definitely look for a bike that you just look at it and go, oh, I just want to take that, you know. So
Yeah. Yeah, I will, that's awesome. Well, yeah, my husband's been, right after you take the course, you're, like, really amped and you, like, go looking for a bike everywhere, and so I've just been trying to be careful to, like you said, really get what I what I want. I'm not being super picky just because it's the first one, but at the same time, I want it to be something I really like.
sure.
So, yeah, at this point, we've been just kind of waiting for the right the right one, I guess.
Hmm. I'll bet.
So,
Well,
yeah, well, very cool.
one of the
Well,
nice
thank you
things
for all
about
that.
yeah, and one of the nice things about living in South Carolina is, you can ride almost all year long. So your investment's going to go a long way. If you lived in Montana, you can only ride for 4 months out of the year.
True. Yeah, well, it's like it
So
gets cold here, but at least there's not snow on the ground and, you can
right.
still you just gotta bundle up, so
Well, you do and you don't. It took me a long time to realize, but I'm going to give you a trick. When you buy your motorcycle, once the next cold season comes around, invest in heated gear. It's the best thing in the world.
Heated gear.
heated gear. So they make a motorcycle jacket they make an underlayer or a jacket that you wear underneath your motorcycle jacket. Kind of looks like you remember the old school members only jacket.
Yeah.
So just think of something like that, right?
Okay.
But it's heated. It's lined with heated material, and so you plug it in to your motorcycle, and it's like you're riding in this chilly air while you're wrapped in a warm, heated blanket.
Wow.
It's crazy.
See, I'm learning so much from you, Chris.
Yeah.
I need
And
to
then you
get
get
all my information from you. You need to be my, like,
absolutely.
consultation expert.
You've got me on speed dial.
I know,
You can get
man.
heat
That does make
gloves.
sense, though. I mean, gosh, that'd be a game changer.
It's a game changer. And the cool part about it is the one downside to layering up, a lot of people just layer up. So before you know it, if you really want to ride in those cooler temperatures, you're dressed up like the Goodyear blimp. And so
Yeah.
it's really hard to move, and it's really
Yeah.
inhibits your riding.
Mhm.
And then the worst part is you stop for lunch and you go into a restaurant. And you gotta peel this layer off, peel that layer
Right,
off.
take it all yep.
With heated gear, you don't have to bundle up with all those layers. And when you stop, you just unplug it or turn it down, go in, and it's a game changer. Let me tell you.
Well,
And
yeah. Well,
they
I
make
almost
heated
wonder why
gloves.
everybody doesn't have that, though. Is it
I don't know.
expensive, or do people not know about it?
Expensive is yeah. What's expensive to you? I don't know.
Okay, that answers
I
the
think
question.
my heated jacket was maybe $179.
Okay. I think
If
that I
that
mean,
if
if
that
you have a bike, you should be able to get that.
if that allows you to ride for 2 additional months out of the year, that's a no-brainer, right?
Yep, yep. You're saving anyway by riding the bike instead of the car.
Yep.
That's what I say. So, that's funny, that's funny. Well, lots of good information with you, Chris. I mean, I think we might have to do a couple more videos on some different motorcycle topics.
Let's
You
do it.
got you
You're
got so
gonna
much
get
good info.
we got off on a tangent about the whole lane splitting thing. You're gonna get a ton of mail, and you know that's a very polarizing topic. So we should redress that and go into more details. But after people ask you questions about that. But
Yeah, well, and that's the we have some really great viewers who kind of will weigh in and ask questions, and we always welcome that. I mean, I'm learning about it too. This is the first time I've heard about it. So
mhm.
there's always we welcome, debate.
I think Justin met with some people, a group, a foundation of some sort that is an advocate group for safety on motorcycles.
Well, we have ABATE,
That's it. That's it.
which is a legislative group that kind of, fights for motorcyclists and changing laws to kind of help them. I think right now, they're working on like yielding. There
Hmm.
being harsher penalties for cars that don't yield and hit motorcycles.
Hmm.
But yeah, they have a different legislation that they work on to kind of fight for bikers and biker rights. And so, yeah, we do a lot of work with them. We try to support them when we can. So,
I think that is so cool. And correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't Justin also have a handbook out?
yeah, Justin's everywhere. He's
I
everywhere. He's involved in everything. Yeah,
know.
so he has a whole like Myrtle Beach biker lawyer branch of the
Uh-huh.
law firm. He's very passionate about, you know, bikers getting what they should because he
The
feels there's a
proper
lot of
protection.
well, yeah, because, we feel that there are, a lot of ways that, motorcyclists are kind of underserved because people don't really know how to handle them in a
Hmm.
lot of situations involving accidents and just insurance and, all the things, just because there aren't as many
Hmm.
motorcyclists as there are cars. And so a lot of times training is not spent, very long on biker rules and biker laws and all that stuff. So people aren't always the most equipped to handle that. And so we try to inform and educate and also be there to help fight for bikers if something happens. So we
Mhm,
have a whole separate motorcycle branch of the firm where we go out to a lot of biker events and of course
mhm,
all the rallies that are here in the area. And to your question, yes, they have a motorcycle rider's guide
mhm,
booklet
mhm.
that you can download the e-form on our website, but then also we have like a paperback booklet of it as well that just kind of goes over,
If
stuff
you're
that
in an
they already
accident, this is what you
know.
need to know. Yeah.
Yeah, stuff they already know, like the hand signals and all that stuff, but then also, yeah, the most common injuries and what to do if
Mhm,
something does happen. And there's a lot of
mhm.
really good information in there for sure.
Well, two-thirds of all motorcycle fatalities are caused by the car.
Oh yeah.
So two-thirds, it's the car's fault, and majority of those, it's being rear-ended.
Mhm.
Because as a motorcyclist, if you're in traffic and there's a distracted driver texting behind you and they don't see you and they don't stop in time, you have no recourse if you're in. That's part of why I was telling you earlier that lane splitting is actually safer because it allows the
That makes sense.
motorcyclist to not be rear-ended. That's the
Yeah, you're
number
not in the
one
way.
fatality. And the studies have shown, comparing Florida, Texas, and California, and we use those specific states because they have the same riding season. So if you were to compare it to New York State, for example, they only ride half the year, for example. That wouldn't be fair. But if you
Mhm.
compare similar states with similar riding seasons, 30% less fatalities in California per capita per given number of motorcycles
Hmm.
than Florida and Texas. 30% of people
Wow.
that are alive today on motorcycles that wouldn't be if they were simply riding in Florida or Texas, just
Wow.
because of that one law. So yeah,
That's something
just
to think about for sure.
yeah.
We just shared a video, it was over the summer, I think towards the end of the summer, but it's the same thing. Someone was stopped on Ocean Boulevard here in downtown Myrtle Beach, and the surveillance video got a car. Same thing, just kinda ran right over them. They were
Mhm.
okay, luckily, but it's exactly what you're saying. They were stopped, and the car just kinda, like, toppled kept toppling over the bike, which was it's crazy to me because, yeah, they teach bikers to just to be very defensive and be
Yeah,
careful and all this stuff, and you really have no control over something like that, you know?
right. Yeah. Yeah, we
So
don't have bumpers, we don't have airbags, we don't have, this big cage around us to protect us. So you have to be very wary and very. When I'm driving on my motorcycle, when I'm riding on my motorcycle, I'm a much better driver than I am when I'm in my car. Just
mhm.
because, just the nature of, I'm in a nice comfy seat, I got music going,
Mhm.
your mind wanders because it's such an easy
You have this
task.
big safety barrier, you feel like.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can drive with one finger, on your steering. It's just such
Yeah.
an easy thing to do. You can put your cruise control on. Whereas
Mhm.
on a motorcycle, both hands are active, both hands need something to
Mhm.
do,
Mhm.
both feet have something to do. It's an immersive experience, and
Mhm.
therefore you are acutely alert on another level as you are in
Well,
normal
and you're
time.
so exposed too.
Correct.
So, you don't have that kind of safety net
Yeah.
that the car provides you.
Yeah.
So,
And
very
that's nothing
true.
against the car driver. We take that on ourselves. We have to
Mhm.
recognize, hey, that was my choice to ride a
Mhm.
motorcycle. Therefore, it's my responsibility to be aware and try to avoid being hit. It's not necessarily their responsibility. Um, but if they are texting and driving and they hit a motorcyclist, they should realize they're. My favorite thing to tell my people who drive cars only is there are no fender benders on a motorcycle.
Mm.
There's no such thing. You
Mhm.
don't come home from work and go, I had a good day at work, honey, but I was in a little fender bender on the way home. If
Yeah.
you are hit when you're on a motorcycle, it's lights out. So
Mm.
yeah, you have to be
That
careful.
does put things into perspective.
Yeah.
Very yeah, very crazy. Man, I love all your statements. I love all the intel. But it really goes in line with what we do here too. So it's helpful to kind of get I mean, you have such experience with writing. You've been doing it basically your whole life, and so it is nice to hear you speak about it because I'm still a novice with writing, and so it all those statistics that you're kind of bringing up is really helpful, I think,
Mhm.
to people who are experienced like you are, so it's always good to remember those things. And for people who just drive cars, I mean, I know after going through my writer's course and everything, I noticed that I'm even more you say that you're much more aware when you're driving a bike than you are when you're driving a car. And I find now that if I notice a bike is around me while I'm
Mhm.
driving my car, I'm
Mhm.
almost like I'm the same way too. I'm like extra careful as if
Mhm.
I'm riding the bike, like if I see them even around me.
Yep.
So, even that kind of a shift in my mindset has happened, which is interesting too, I think.
I think that's awesome.
Mhm.
You haven't ridden much, but you know that whole camaraderie of motorcyclists, they always wave at each other when they go by?
Mhm, mhm.
Or if you're a Harley Davidson, you do the two fingers, right? But there are certain ways that motorcyclists recognize each other and be like, I see you're on a bike. You're cool. Cool, man. So it's that sort of camaraderie.
Yeah. Well, it's
I
the same
find
thing like Jeeps have. I feel like Jeeps are the same way.
sure. But it's funny when you're if you ride a lot like I do and you're driving in your car and you see a motorcyclist, you almost want to do the wave and you're like, he doesn't know that I have a bike.
Right. Man, he doesn't know I'm cool. That's
Uh,
so funny, but yeah, you're right, you're right. But
I wanna send you a book, Rainey. It sounds like you're kind of beginning this new passion in your life.
mhm.
And so I want to send you a book by a friend of mine, Sam Manicom, who's an amazing adventure rider. He
Okay.
did what they call an RTW trip, which means around the world, literally rode his motorcycle around the entire planet,
Wow.
and has written 5 books. Well, he's written 4 books and then put another book together with inspirational stories of other travelers. And I want to send you a copy of that. I think you'll love it, and it'll help you understand, I think, the uh, the joys and the freedoms that adventure motorcycling can bring.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love that. That's very nice of you, thank you.
Yeah,
Well,
I'll get
because
your
there's a lot of people too that don't understand writing. They're like, "Why on earth would you put yourself in that situation? It's so dangerous, you have kids," all these things, and, I struggle with telling them, "It's okay, I'm fine, I'm careful," what do you say with people that kind of I mean, do you have anybody that kinda gives you crap with about writing?
let me answer that. The easiest, most amazing way that you can respond to that is, would you let your daughter go horseback riding?
Hmm,
More
that's an
people are
interesting
more people are killed horseback riding than motorcycling.
No. Really?
Oh, I should rephrase. More people are injured
Injured, okay.
horseback riding. There are
Wow.
so many things that we as humans endeavor and take on that uh, we do besides motorcycling that are much more dangerous than motorcycling.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
I'm with you. I struggle with that because people are like, "You have young kids, why would you put yourself in that?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, we put ourselves in danger when we drive cars, we put ourselves in
right,
danger. I
right.
mean, there's lots of things we do, and I think, yeah, I mean, it's a motorcycle, it's more of,
Unfortunately,
you're more exposed, but I think there are ways to still be careful and
sure,
do it and live a long, happy life, It doesn't
absolutely.
necessarily mean I'm gonna die.
You said yourself, I've been riding since I was a kid. I have never been in an accident with another vehicle. I've dropped my bike
Really?
many times, but I've never been in an accident.
That's interesting because everybody says, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of
When?
when.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
But if you're like we were talking about earlier, if you are always when you get on a motorcycle, if you enter that mindset that I am not protected, and you're always scanning your mirrors and you're always just trying to be aware of what's around you, and if you ride, within your limits,
Mhm.
there are, ways to
Well, and
mitigate that.
you do a lot of kind of the off-roading stuff too, which I think eliminates some extra scares of, being ran into from behind or whatever from the cars. So in a way,
It only
what you
includes the
do
going off onto a cliff, but it eliminates the car part.
that's all on you though, we can't ever blame another driver for that. So
true. No, you're right. Unfortunately, to get to a lot of the off-roading trails, you have to be on a highway.
true, true.
But you're right.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm uh, a big proponent. Have you ever heard of ATGAT?
No.
It's an acronym which means all the gear, all the time. Majority of motorcycle accidents or majority of accidents in general happen within a 5 mile radius of your home.
Hmm.
So if you say, I'm just going to Walmart down the street, I don't need to put my seatbelt on. It's a bad thing to think.
Mm.
I'm just going to, the gas station. I don't need to put my helmet on. It's a bad thing to think. So when I get on a motorcycle, it doesn't matter if I'm just going to the grocery store or if I'm going cross country, I always wear a helmet. I always have a jacket with full pads. So that's another important thing to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love everything you're saying, Chris. You're such a great advocate for just, having fun, but being safe. And I think that's really cool.
Thank you.
So, well, I feel like we could talk forever. We've already been on here for over an hour. So basically, I want to kind of gather some more questions for you and maybe do another one of these if you're up for it.
I would love it. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think
And I'll
after we release this and kind of, um, get some feedback and also I have, so many questions just about the motorcycle world and I had no idea that you were so educated on so many of the issues and statistics and all these things. So I think it's great and I would love to pick your brain some more.
Well, maybe we could partner up. You can put a bug in Justin's ear. We can start working on getting lane splitting and lane filtering legal in South Carolina.
Yeah, I'll put a bug in his ear for sure. Well, I know he loves you already, so I'm sure he's like, "Yeah, whatever you say."
My buddy Jason, I told you Jason, Steve, and I run Moto Photo Adventures. Jason does all the editing or majority of the editing. He's unbelievable, but he's also brilliant. He's got a phenomenal mind, dry sense of humor, but he's already been in talks with a few people about how Moto Photo Adventures could help bring awareness to the additional safety factors and
Yeah,
how we could bring legislature in, introduce some sort of bill that would start the conversation. It's
I
not
love
going to
it.
happen overnight. There has to be a huge public awareness campaign with
Mhm.
a major traffic law change like that. There has to be a huge public awareness campaign so that car drivers understand why it's legal and why it's safer and why it's being done. But I, I think we should get Justin on board and we we can work on this.
Yeah. I'm definitely open to kinda getting together and chatting about it more, and I need to put you in touch with, our contact, Ralph, with ABATE, because I mean, there are chapters, ABATE chapters, I mean, almost every city has one, and that's literally what they do is work on legislation, so, I need to put you in touch with him as well.
All right. I just wrote ABH down. So I know it's an acronym for something. I forget what it is.
I mean, you should know because 'cause you've got all
I
these
know.
acronyms memorized. You've given us maybe 10 acronyms and, like, laid them out, so that's pretty good.
Uh, you know,
So, but yeah, I'll give you his information, and we'll touch base obviously after this call, but I really appreciate you hopping on here and chatting with me.
I
You
would
are an
love it.
interesting guy.
Oh, thank you. You're a great interviewer. And I'm going to send you that book. So when we talk next time, I want
Yes.
to hear your thoughts about
Okay.
taking your brand new Honda Rebel and traveling around the world with
Hopefully, I have my Rebel at that point.
it.
If you see any good deals down by your neck of the woods, you let me know.
All right.
All black, all black.
All black. You got it.
All right, Chris. Well, thank you so much. I know that we'll be seeing you again soon, but thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Randy. It's been a pleasure.
When life gets ugly, justice is lovely, the lovely